Welcome to Season 2 of Producer Points. My name is Justin Gammella, and I'll be your host. I'm a producer and songwriter who's had the honor of working with some of the best in the industry. This season, we're diving even deeper into one-on-one conversations with producers, mixers, songwriters, and artists, exploring their unique journeys, creative process, and insights that shape great music. Join me for real talks, straight from the studio, where music and life intersect. This is Producer Points. Welcome back to another Roundtable episode of Producer Points. Today we're going to be talking about, is your favorite plugin ruining your mix? We all know plugins are essential. They help us shape sounds, fix problems, and unlock creative possibilities. But what happens when we lean on them too much? Whether it's slapping the same vocal chain on every session, throwing OTT on everything, or over-EQing a perfectly good take, the truth is, your favorite plugin might be ruining your mix. Just like in cooking, too much of a good thing can overwhelm the dish. A little spice brings it to life, too much, and it kills the flavor. In the same way, overcompressing, oversaturating, and overprocessing can flatten out the very thing you're trying to elevate. So in today's roundtable, we're unpacking the habits, shortcuts, and plugin crutches that might be holding your mix back, and how to recognize when less is actually more. Before I introduce our guests, I just want to say these three are some of my closest friends, so if and when this conversation goes off the rails, just know I did everything I could to keep it on track. So our first guest today is a versatile, it's already going off track, a versatile producer and songwriter whose credits include Shawn Mendes in Fifth Harmony. He is known for blending sharp musical instincts with genre-spanning creativity. He's one of my first friends in Los Angeles. DJ Daylight Kyriakides. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Greetings. Thanks for having me, man.
Our next guest Our next guest is a Grammy-nominated producer, songwriter, and mixer with a wide-ranging career spanning major label cuts and indie gems. He was a fan favorite guest last season, and he is a fan favorite for me because I love him so much. Scott Robinson.
I keep you pinned in my messages, dog.
Same, buddy. That's very sweet. And finally, we have another Grammy-nominated producer and songwriter with global credits across pop and K-pop, from Bella Poarch and Benson Boone to NCT Dream and King. A true studio workhorse and a force behind the boards. He's as kind as he is knowledgeable and a true gem of a human. David Arkwright. Thanks for being here, my friend.
This is Rageaholics Anonymous, right? Like I'm in the right meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm waiting for you guys to rage. I'm kind of just here for the spectacle.
What do you mean? This is either going to be the best episode or the worst episode. There's no in between.
It's going to be the best one. Hell yes.
It's going to be the most highly edited.
No, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. The more we talk over each other, the less editable it is. So anyway, as I sip on my Negroni here, I knew I needed a drink to talk to you guys today.
There you go.
Like I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about a really fun topic, and I think it's why the three of you guys signed up for it right away. We're going to be talking about, is your plugin ruining your mix? Is your favorite plugin ruining your mix? And, this is such a thing. We all have the inside jokes with one another, with other producers on the internet, of the classic plugins that either make our mix amazing, kill it, something in between. Who knows? Before we get into the specific plugins that I have on my list here, I wanted to talk about more of our individual kind of habits here. DJ, I'll start with you. What's one plugin you rely on every mix, and do you think you're maybe overusing it?
I don't use as many plugins lately as I have in the years past, but I think I use FabFilter Pro Q 4, maybe as much or more than anyone else. Anytime I think I need to make any adjustment, that's what I do. And I have my own fun favorite ways to use it, as I'm sure most of us, even on this call, probably do. But I don't think I use it. I would like to think I use it well enough where it's not a problem. But I don't know if I have any that I immediately overuse. Even though I've been through this cycle. I feel like we've done this cycle a lot. All of us have gotten super hyped on something. You know what? Just scratch everything I just said. It's Waves BB Tubes. It's probably that. It's probably BB Tubes now that I'm like my brain was thinking through it. I think that's what it is. I use it a lot, and I think I'm using it in ways that I don't use anything else, and it's giving me fantastic results so far.
What do you mean by that? Because like with me, it sits on my instrument bus. That's like kind of like my go-to. Like, it just brings everything to life a little bit more. But how do you like to use it?
I guess here I'll give you a little bit of my sauce. Whether it's valuable or not, it'll be up to you. But first thing I do is 2 big knobs. Knob on the left, I crank it all the way up until it starts to growl. There's a point where it starts to actually break apart and growl, and I pull it a couple of clicks back from that. Then I go to the one on the right, and I do the exact same thing, all the way up until it starts to growl too much, and then back a few clicks, right? And I change the output down anywhere 4 dB to like 6 or 7 dB, just to compensate, because I know I'm pushing a lot into it, you know what I mean? And then the best part about it for me in this one is there's a bass relief knob.
Yeah,
that when you turn
knob
it up,
is the best part of it, yeah.
It just lets go of what it's doing in your bottom end, which is fantastic. And then right above it, the sensitivity is like a headroom knob. You basically just wiggle it left to right, and then it sounds better at some point, I promise. But like there's like one spot in between there that it just sounds great. And so I very quickly go through all of this. There's a mix knob on it too, but most of the time this is maybe where I get myself in trouble. And I probably just hit it 100% too much.
Yeah, well, when you're using it, are you using it on like individual tracks? Or you like to use it at more of a bus level?
I use it different ways for different ones. I definitely have used it on the bus. I haven't used it on mixed bus stuff as much. I love it on drums. I love it on bass. I love it on vocals that need to sound pushed. It's super fun. I'll tell you one thing about I think it's the transformer switch that's on the side. When I've recorded something, like through my chains going into the computer, I sometimes get this nice depth and dimension to the recordings that if I want to retain that, I turn that off in the plugin. But if I'm using something that I didn't sort of already spend a lot of time getting dialed in the analog realm, I will not worry about that, and I will keep that on. But it does something. It changes something. And I lose
this
something.
is almost like a good overuse. I have yet to like that's one of those plugins I feel like personally I have yet to like find a way to make sound bad. Obviously, if you push it too much, it'll start to sound bad. But like anything, too much of it is bad.
It sounds fun, man.
Yeah, Dave, I'll give the same questions to you. What's a plugin you use a lot that maybe you're just on the cusp of overusing?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question since I saw the title. I think, it's like same thing. It's like Pro Q4 is like heavy in the everywhere because it's just so inherently versatile, and especially with like the new analog mode, which I love a lot. Like that warm, it's just like doing a thing that it wasn't doing before. Yeah, which I'm a big fan of. Probably, I'm a big fan of Gold Clip Track, actually, for like a lot of like sort of like generalized dynamics control, like, not crazy pushing unless it's on drums or some other stuff, but like that's probably an example of like a real like go-to, which I just sort of use haphazardly. And I can imagine I'm sure I have found myself in a place where I've, clipped something a little too far, which at the moment felt very exciting. And then like 2 months later, I'm like, son of a bitch, there's like that.
2 months. Come on. 2 months.
No, but like, like that, but like
you get the day of bounce and then you listen to it 2 months later. You're like, oh no.
Yeah. I try really hard from
like 2 hours later and I'm pissed at myself for stuff like that sometimes.
For like at like a bus level, I try really hard to like, cause I did a huge deep dive on the how the plugin actually works and how like if you're using the gold shit, whatever, that actually it's like a non-linear push into the clipper. So as long as you actually hover below the clipper, it's a really interesting sort of like warmth and thickness that occurs. So I actually try not to like clip with it that much, but the track version itself on like individual elements, that one I use quite a bit. I think that's maybe a good example. Or like I'm still a big fan of like Spectre. Gets pushed around a lot just for, I have found I can make more meaningful EQ moves with sort of like less of a push. But sometimes I question, I'm sure like now looking at it, in retrospect, I question whether or not like I saw a great piece of advice the other day that I kind of hated it because it was like from like a really shitty like points account, but it was like, can you make the move with volume instead of with a plugin? And like at first I was like, of course you can, shut up. And then like it's been gnawing at me in the back of my brain for 2 weeks now where I'm like, maybe you're right. So like there's some element of that where I think like, you know, I think we're probably all guilty of in terms of just generalized like EQ moves of like, did you just think about turning it up or turning it down first and see if that solved your problem?
I mean, that's what it was back in the day. They just had the mixer channel just go up or down. That was really,
exactly.
you know?
Like there's that, certainly like that element to it for sure. So I think
Dave, can I ask you, are you still using Goldfoss?
At a like
Great question.
At a like sub 2%, it still lives on
What does that mean at sub 2%? 2% mix?
Yeah, like
wow.
Like maybe it's still living on my like instrument bus, I think, and just like it's one of those things where like it's become a framework with which to work, if that makes sense. So it's like it just sort of
really quick for our listeners. Goldfoss is like an intelligent EQ. If you guys don't know that plugin as well,
Spectral thing, right?
Yeah. But I've gotten way out of the heavy-handed use of it, or like anywhere that doesn't sort of, I think it's, where is it sitting now? It sits on my instrument bus and it sits on, I think, my vocal bus. But again, it's like a 2% of the recover and a 2% of something else. And like periodically I'll turn it off and turn it on. And most of the time I find I prefer it in than out. But it's like there are a non-zero amount of times where like I turn it off and I go like, I could live without it. You know, it's become one of those things where it's like,
and then you got to ask a little bit like how much of that is because you mixed into it.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
I'm judging a little bit. I got to be honest, man. Goldfoss, I don't know, dude.
You know, it's
I
funny.
remember when it came out, man. Dave, you were using. You were one
dude,
of
he
us,
turned me onto it.
Yeah,
Dave
you were
put me onto it.
I have, you know, it's interesting. It's like you go back into
I
like,
can say word for word what Dave said about it.
oh wow,
Oh my God, game changer.
Yeah, and
That's true.
To be clear, I believe that statement was accurate at the time. And you'll notice that the dearth of the music industry has actually moved in that direction and not away from it.
Yeah, there's so many versions of that plugin now too. Like isotopes,
The
stabilizer.
dearth is certainly
you know.
moving.
Dude, the isotope stuff I love.
Yeah.
Well, look at that dearth.
I actually prefer stabilizer. I prefer stabilizer to Goldfoss now, personally.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's like everything's moved in sort of the direction of like an intelligent EQ. And I think with like the proliferation of that has also emerged the idea that like, ooh, like too much of this is a really bad, fucked up, phasey thing. That's like, that's a great, probably everyone's number one example of like, you know, I'm sure like, the biggest example I could give for a lot of people overusing a thing would be like a Soothe or something like that.
Yeah,
where it's like,
we're gonna talk about that plenty later.
We all knew Soothe was coming.
And I think
we all knew it was coming up.
Yes, and so I think with many things like that that are intelligent, it's like it does tend to be one of those things. I think the reason why I continue to have Goldfoss like living on a couple buses is because like it tends to get me there a little bit faster than otherwise. And so from like a turnaround perspective, like there's like that element of a thing. But I try not to have it so overly dialed that it's like if the plugin ignited and burned and evaporated from my computer, I wouldn't really miss it one way or the other.
Have you compared it to the spectral dynamics in FabFilter Pro Q4 yet? How does that compare yet?
You know what I found? The only reason I haven't like I haven't used it, I don't know that I've used it as a direct comparison. I think I've used that as more of a direct comparison for like solving maybe what a Soothe would pull up to do or like something like that. And largely the reason, honestly, I've used the spectral version in Pro Q4 more in a standalone audio suite kind of perspective, just because of like because it moves everything up to linear phase for that specific band. And so it's like, at first I was like, I'm swapping everything out. And then like, you know, I like, it's on the mix bus, it's on wherever. And then like, you know, 5 minutes into that, I was like, my computer's just like crash. And I was like, okay, this is not going to be sustainable. And also weirdly, it's like, I have become super weary of, a lot of like spectral a lot of like spectral related stuff where like now I have I find myself in the phase of like, if I want this area gone, I'm just gonna, with like a single band kind of move. But I think I also think like I can give you, and we all can give you examples of where both of those things are adequate. Like, like no one hates Soothe more than me, and I now have like a hotkey built into SoundFlow for that moment where I'm just like, this motherfucker just does a thing that other things don't do, and I just need it.
I mean, I'll give my flowers to Goldfoss. I'll give my flowers to Goldfoss because, like, you guys are mostly working on stuff that you guys produce, and so it sounds amazing. But when I'm getting stuff in for mixed, like, Goldfoss can save a track that's just like a boring sounding element that needs to sound big, or like I'm using it kind of in the opposite way of Soothe. I'm using it more to enhance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really good at that. And you know what's funny? Since we're talking about Soothe and Goldfoss, and sorry to skip over, what plugin you're using, Scott, but I had this question here that I thought was really interesting. Do we think, and maybe Scott, you'll answer this first. Do we think tools like Soothe 2 and Goldfoss and Isotopes Stabilizer, do we feel like that they're making mixes better, or are they just making them more like generic? Like they're all doing the same thing. So now all our records are kind of like sounding the same.
Yeah, I think very much the second thing. I think the tools are, because of the nature of automated tools and, shooting for a specific target, we're ending up closer to the target.
Right.
And, something that I'm trying to stay pretty focused on is like, what's the emotion of the thing? When is it raw and good? And when is it raw and bad? And just being really like cognizant of over fixing.
There's definitely some like broad spectrum, like all of them, especially when you're talking about like in a mix bus level, are kind of all doing the same thing, which is like remove mud and like get rid of 300 hertz. Fuck you. And of course, like, the then inherent thing about that is that like it's, sucking out a lot of musical, very necessary, like good information.
Fundamentals.
And I do think
one of my favorite records from last year was the Sabrina Carpenter Please Please Please, where like that has a lot of like 300 and 400 in it. If you like really listen to it, you're like, oh, like it's so, I don't know, like in that area, very present. And I think we forget about that area sometimes because exactly like this, it's like we're trying to
talking about my areas.
Yeah. Well, especially like in, what producers are expected to do in today's world, where they want us to write and produce the song in a day and then get a bounce that sounds nearly done in the same day or within the same week.
For free.
So, right, for free. Right, yeah, exactly. And
For free.
And
devastating.
And it causes, and like for me, it's like I say it to everything, like I'm just trying to get, to dinner with my wife and kids, and it's like I use these tools so I can do that, so I can be like, okay, this sounds good. I'm getting it at a certain level. This sounds, better than other demos I hear from other people. So it's like, cool, that's like kind of my thing, and I'm not super worried about it sounding like unique in a way. I'm just like, cool, it sounds like it can compete with something that they're listening to on Spotify right now. That's like kind of my goal. And then when I'm able to do more deeper dives into like when I'm working with an artist or something, that's when I'm able to be like, when I have the courage, rather, that's really what it is. When I have the courage to really like start turning off some of these things that I use a lot, like a God particle or, Ozone or whatever, and like shape it myself and like make it more of like a customized mix bus, like per song, or customized things, per song, I guess. It's I don't know. DJ, you have anything you want to say about that?
I prefer to, I've gone through various phases of this in my career when I've had a template that was super stacked and had everything where I thought it ought to go in the order it ought to go and everything exactly. And I operated inside a template like that for, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years. And I definitely got to a point where I thought everything I was making was starting to sound similar in a way that I was not excited about. And that it's been a few years since that decision, but now I kind of only reach for these things when I have a specific artistic reason or a specific function in my mind that I'm going for. I try not to pull things up just to kind of, excuse me. I try not to pull things up just because I think they should go someplace. I kind of sit there and go, okay, I need to make this thing brighter. So let me reach for this. This is going to make it brighter in the way I think I need to get it there. Or this needs to be shaped in some other way. So I pull up, in this room, there's like a Carnaby HE2 here that is excellent for fixing and shaping and changing things. Like whenever I need it, I just know I can reach for that and kind of do that. But I don't ever sit there and go, it's always on my, I always have this chain for my bass or my drums or my piano or whatever. And I feel like I'm making every single day I sit down and make something, it sounds completely different than the thing I made before. And it's exciting and risky. But I didnlike what I was doing before that. I think it's different for everybody, obviously.
No. And it's funny because like for listeners, like me, DJ and Dave like worked together for a couple of years, and we like were sharing kind of the same templates, and I still have like versions of that or whatever. And for me now, kind of how I approach my template is I actually have a lot more plugins on it, but they're all inactive, and they're kind of there for me to more quickly just be like exactly kind of what you're saying was like, oh, like on my drum buzz, I want something that's going to make it brighter, and I have this plugin on there, or I want it to like get a little bit more of that tape thing, so I have Toop on there. I just have a lot of things ready to go. I even have like another what's it called thing next to my mix bus just filled with plugins just for me to quickly drag on just because it's just faster for me, where it's like it's on a preset that I like use a lot, and I'm like, okay, I know this does this, and I want to see if I put that on there, how does that feel? And it kind of makes me still work quickly, but also still relying on like presets and templates to like work quickly in that medium.
That's the difference. Is I think that working quickly is certainly a big part of what we're doing. But this is like, I guess sometimes I think like the mixing part and the shaping part is the fun part. It's the thing that I don't want to like rush through too fast sometimes. And all the reasons you mentioned before are completely valid. But I want to I want to sit there and spend some time with some of this stuff sometimes. But yeah, I guess I would say the other thing I would say is, do you feel like looking at the plugin inactive on the screen there makes you want to use it? Because that's what I found for me, I found like I was just turning something on because I had it there, and it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I gave in to the convenience of it. And you know what I'm saying? Do you feel like that urge to use it because it's right there?
I had that urge, and I took off a lot of those plugins. Like I had like Orion on my drum bus for like 2 months, and I was like, this thing is doing too much a lot, and I can't just like
game
always
changer.
have it. Yeah, right.
Game changer.
Things like that. And now it's like I try and be a lot more purposeful about the plugins that are, in there. It's funny. I want to stay on the topic because one of my next topics before we start going into more specific plugins here is, what's in your default chain. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about, like, since we're talking about our templates here and mix buses here, what are some plugins that you guys like to put in your mix bus plugin, like we'll say like 90% of the time or something like that? Dave, what do you like to use?
Sorry, on my mix bus?
Yeah, 2 bus.
Well, let me think.
The Stereo Master Bus.
Yeah, there's a Widener set to 700%.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
and then the Oxford
Perfect
limiter,
phase.
Perfect phase. No, what's on there right now? The Weiss mastering EQ. Not really doing a whole bunch. I just sort of like the way it sounded. What else? There's actually a fair amount of stuff doing very individual small tasks that I have tried to assign to other plugins and then have decided I would prefer having 2 things than I would having 1 thing because they're doing these 2 things better. So there's that. There is... I was resistant to it for a long time, but actually the Weiss de-esser is doing like a really just interesting feathering on, and this is more of a me thing of what I found is that like I, despite my very best efforts over time of like I have a playlist of just dark mixes and just whatever, is like I just naturally default as like a bright human. So like literally it's like often it's like I will spend 25 minutes just listening to fucking dark songs and just getting myself to a place wherever, but it's still often isn't enough for me. So there's like an element of like buffers, like you could call it like bumpers on the bowling alley kind of situation. That
have you tried the SSL HF comp?
I have not. No.
Oh, I think you're gonna like it.
I'll take a look.
I think you're gonna like it.
It accomplishes that too. I think. I've used that one before. That one's very gentle on a mix wide thing too. So maybe the Vice
amazing on the snare drum.
Interesting.
Amazing on a snare drum.
Oh hell yeah!
I haven't tried that. I gotta check it out.
Yeah, because right now for like snare stuff, I'm sitting on like the Spectral Shaper or something. Is like, and I barely ever hit it. It's
how
just
often do you guys find yourselves using snare drums?
I don't use them anymore. If I get a mix that has snare drums, I pull up trigger and I leave the slots empty. That's like that's the secret setting. Slots empty. Print the trigger. Snare drum. Done.
That's whack. I actually just delete the whole session and I call the client and I just say I'm sorry. It's
I'm sorry. I'm not really taking songs with snare drums right now.
Sorry, Dave. Hold on, Dave. Keep going with your mix bus. We'll try to keep us on top as much as we can.
No. It's all good. Again, still like there's a gold clip sitting there, but it's not actually hitting anything. Ozone exists there for like, some various little kind of things. And then one thing that I've actually put on recently that I like a lot, and I'm looking at it, is the Mic DSP.
Nice.
The machine head?
No, the rack output ones. They have this part of the
APB.
The APB, yeah. And part of the APB series is their tape plugin, which I have not historically been a big like for at least the last couple of years, like a big like throw a tape on the thing. I've done it. I've not done it. I generally don't prefer it. This is like the most to my ears, the most musical sounding, like lightest touch, but is absolutely doing a thing. And it has this compressor built into it that I fucking love. And I was against like anything other than sort of like clipping and very light limiting dynamics control on a bus. And it's only doing usually about, I dial it to about half a dB. But it has sort of reinvigorated my love of compression again, which I think I had lost. Like, you don't
love compression on the 2-bus, man. This is the stuff in my dreams is compressors on 2-buses.
But like I didn't for a long time. Like I sort of went down, as I think many people in LA did, and I think it was a worthwhile fucking pill for everyone to go down the John Castelli route of like.
I was gonna mention that I had always heard that. I never bought into it, but I heard it. It was paradigm shifting for enough people to try that out.
Yeah, I will say for me, the sort of experience of that ended up being like a sort of necessary, like, hey, stop relying on compression, and like sort of just like a slap in the face of kind of similar to like the point of this is like, why the fuck are we using the thing that we're using? Yeah. And that it was healthy for that way. It sort of did the same thing that I think you're talking about, DJ, in terms of like, it made me like dump out all of my plugin, like, that whole like time of them doing that podcast was good for me in that respect. And then after several years, I sort of came back to like, no, I do like certain compressors doing a certain thing, so whether it's like bass or vocals or like the 2-bus, it is giving me an energy that I otherwise don't get. And when I turn it off, I fucking miss it. And so like, that's an example of something I put on recently. Those are a couple things.
Scott, what about you? Being like, the more recent mixer, what do you like to keep on your mix bus?
Well, as you guys know, I'm in a little bit of a different world now with Console One, so I'm not really touching plugin menus all that often. Console One is always on the mix bus, and like right now, I've got a massive passive on there, I think, and a Pultec, and a 2500, and a Fairchild. I don't think I'm using all those, but definitely most of them. I mentioned the SSL stuff. I've been using the SSL stuff a lot, and I'm looking at this session. I have the vintage drive on there. The density knob on that thing is super dope. I think that's a very cool one. Spectre. I got Spectre on there. That one's kind of like, I mixed it and now I lost something somewhere along the way. I scooped out some frequency a little too much, and now I'm just going to like bring it back a little bit, because I probably cut it for a good reason. It's probably annoying, but if I bring it back with Spectre now, it's going to be nice and pleasant and musical. So that is not infrequent. And I admit, Ozone kind of lives on the 2-bus, and it's just a question of what I do with it. You mentioned the stabilizer. I really like the stabilizer. I use the imager sometimes. I use impact sometimes, but I'm generally going to other stuff now. And now these days, transients are just not making it quite as far down the chain. Like we were talking about clippers, and I've been on K-Clip 3 pretty good. The multi-band setting on that I really love. So, you know, by the time I have that on a drum bus, bass bus, vocal bus, whatever it ends up on, usually I don't have to deal with too many transients like being overly aggressive by the time we get to the 2-bus. And then, you know, if I'm doing...
I was going to say by transients you mean just people walking through your yard, but
it's LA, dude.
I've now
There's
ruined your
train
of thought for a joke that didn't really work. So let's move on. Anyways.
I learned from Ozone the way they were using the impact module, because my instinct would probably be to pull up a module like that and be like, yeah, let me get some transients out of this. But if you do the, you know, magic auto setting or whatever they call it, you'll notice that they're always pulling out some transients, and then you can see how that's hitting their maximizer limiter, like in the auto settings, and like they're being really smart about it. They're like sort of trimming the transients just a little bit so the limiter is not working as hard. And the same thing with the dynamic EQ.
Love that. Hey gang, I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that the best way you can help this podcast grow is to rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It tells the algorithm to push our show to other listeners so we can grow. And it's one of, if not the best way to help support this podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, take a second to rate this podcast. Sharing it with your friends would be amazing too. All right, back to the pod. DJ, what about you? What do you like to, you know, not always, but usually keep on your mix bus?
The only thing that lives there right now is the Pro L2, Fab Filter Pro L2. That's it.
Good for you. That's the dream.
Can we address the elephant in the room? Like, we're all hardware boys. We're all hardware boys.
Well, no. So this is the thing: is like most of my day ofs, I don't even have time to do the hardware dress up that I love to do at the end. But you know, I spent a couple of days on some of the most recent demos here, and one thing that I am just, it is worth my time and effort, is analog summing. It is fantastic, and
agreed.
Yeah, it will. It just, I don't know. It's a pain in the ass. I get it. I understand why all the reasons why people don't want to do it, but it changes the way things sit, and I get better results quicker in that same way. So I don't know. Right now, on my, I think you also asked what's on your default track as well. Did you also ask that before the mix bus question?
No, but what? Say it.
It's just like on every default track, at least in Ableton, it's just a utility and a Fab Filter Pro Q4, and they're turned off. And it's like they're just right there in case I need something. And most of the time, I still just instinctively Command F and type in Pro Q. I still just fucking do it. But it's one of those things where I'm really trying to be super intentional, and working with hardware forces me to do that. How much I use each thing, and how you know, whether recall is important, any of those kinds of things. But the Pro L2, I have been loving it, and I run it at super high oversampling at the end of the day. Put it on 16 or 32. I let it run, blast off. Most people I see using the modern setting on it, not for me.
I never loved that one either. Yeah,
I think it's a misleading word. It's a misleading word. So the all around and the dynamic, I think, are the two that have the best sounding low end to me. So most of the time I'm in the dynamic zone. If I have something that's really, I want it to be API-ish and punchy and mid-rangey, their punchy setting is pretty good for that. But that thing, I just love putting it on 1-to-1 so it doesn't mess with the volume coming out. In the bottom right-hand corner, for those not initiated, there's the little 1-to-1 button that you can press, and then it auto-gains what you do. So you can push the fader up on the left, and you can see it start to, the gain reduction start to flare down, and you can just hear. You can hear when it is too much and when it's doing something, and the real trick is to hear it in the smallest amounts, the smallest increments. Like if you can make it 5% better, 2% better even.
We might all be able to agree that these are the plugins that are ruining our mixes.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
you know what I'll tell you though. This is similar to maybe one of my larger points that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about this, which is the intentionality of things. You know, the Pro L2 is the one that is there on the template, but I do swap that out sometimes. Like when I want something to be super different and aggressive, limitless as a limiter.
Yeah, fire.
Yeah, dude.
Just does way different stuff, and I just like that better when I don't want it to be invisible. You know, when I want it to be doing something and carrying some weight. So I don't know. I wonder if do you guys do stuff like that? Are there big moves you'll make just creatively? You know that, you know, not everything goes through some of those things on your mix bus, or do you try to just work within that framework?
For me, it's like I'll sometimes pick a very specific like tape setting if I'm trying to do a specific like big picture thing on the mix bus. That for me is like, you know, whether I'm loading up Tup or ATR or I've been really liking the what's it called, the one I mentioned before, the Machine Head plugin that everyone was geeking over because it had like the Serban, you know, thing on it. The one. Man. I've been using that guy on vocals actually lately.
Gold setting was so annoying. God damn it.
Yeah.
It just
worked.
Speaks, it really
everyone bought it.
To somebody. It speaks to a desire within the community to have silver bullets, to have these things that just cut corners in the best ways and just get you immediately there. And every single year we just see new ones out there. That's maybe a good segue into what some of those plugins end up being.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
we're going to go there. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, maybe you're going to go there. Maybe I'll just wait.
No, I was going to say,
for
in case the listener was curious, what I'm doing on my mix bus lately too is
nope.
I'll just go on. Fuck this guy. Listen. My mix bus, like kind of DJ says, like it really depends on what I'm doing. When I'm doing more singer songwritery stuff, I'm a lot more light-handed. I've been like on a grind lately to really like do less on my mix bus and just in general more for like singer songwritery, just like be like, okay, let's like record it well, engineer it well, and then go from there. But listen, when I'm doing like K-pop pitches or pop pitches, I'm definitely way more heavy-handed on my mix bus just because I know what some of these A&Rs are looking for, you know, in that respect for more of the pop K-pop stuff. Something I just kind of went back to, which I was using a lot, then I stopped, and I went back to it recently, the T-Rack stealth limiter that my buddy Curtis Douglas, he's a mixer, he does a lot of K-pop stuff, put me onto. This is the thing, I put that on at the end of the mix, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's really loud, and it doesn't feel like too much.
Tell the people what the thing is. What are your settings? What is the thing?
Oh, God.
What is the ratio?
Settings.
No, it's your screen.
Because I'm nervous I'm going to stop recording on my thing. But it's like
no,
he pushes
just
it like...
yeah.
No, I push it like 10. Like, I hit the input like plus 10, and then, it's never really going more than like 3 or 4. And it's at that like second or third setting. I don't remember. It's in my Pro Tools template. It's not in this one.
No, that's all right. You give them hints. Give them hints. I just hate when somebody says it does a thing, and then I'm sitting at home being like, "What the fuck is the thing? I don't know the thing. How am I supposed to use this?" He's
requesting to share my screen. I'm not going to share my screen.
That's so funny.
And
no, man, I was going to show you the Magic Ozone settings. If you guys want, if you want the Magic Ozone settings, I'll show them to you. But if you don't want them, that's cool too.
No, I want to, but because I want to move on to these other things because we're already going a little long here. And obviously Oxford, Ozone, the general things. I love the SSL comp, like the SSL version of it. I don't know. I just I keep going back to it. It kind of suits me for whatever reason. All right, that's that. So now we're going to go on to...
maybe SSL, I might argue that SSL is making the most analog sounding plugins.
I would agree with that. I think they're doing a really great job. Every time they make something new, and it's like, oh yeah, like this, it's always really musical, and it's never
really
doing
musical.
Too much.
Yeah, the UAD version of analog, like a really analog sound, I think is too analog.
I still just don't know. I have not heard an analog bus compressor plugin that does compression quite as well as analog. I have to say I haven't heard it. Specifically compression, not EQ, not other things. There's lots of saturation. It's totally different. Specifically compression. a bunch of the hardware compressors I have. I use a West Audio NG bus comp on most of the mixes now, either across the whole mix or at least on the drum bus. But like that thing is, I don't have any plugins that sound like it. I've used hundreds of compressors. I don't understand why I can't get everything to sound quite like that. But it's incredible, and it's like, you know, that kind of stuff. I think I want them to get a little bit closer. You know which one is actually, we used it yesterday, now that I'm thinking out loud of other software compressors. The bus compressor from Plugin Alliance, the Town, what is it?
Townhouse?
Townhouse.
Yeah. Townhouse.
Like,
it's aggressive as fuck, dude.
Yeah, well, I don't know. If you can roll that in the upper right, there's a side chain. You just roll that shit up and ignore all the low end and set yourself free there a little bit. But like that plugin is sometimes pretty good. I don't know. It surprised us the other day. That's another one.
Is that like a VCA, like SSL style compression kind of thing?
Yes, okay. It is VCA style. I think it's definitely has similar controls to SSL bus compression, but it just has a different attitude towards it. I'm sure whatever they modeled it after just has some different saturation. Seems to be what most of the difference in these plugins ends up being, you know.
Okay, I want to move on to the next thing where we're going to go. It's almost like a glorified plug or unplug, really. But we're going to, I guess, basically shit on these plugins a little bit, but maybe try and not shit on them too much. Say the good things about them.
Throw cautionary
those
feces.
Brand deals, baby.
Keep some of the shit
those
in
brand
there.
deals.
Don't shit it all out. That's what he's saying. Just keep some shit in.
Listen, and I want to say for, you know, potential brand deals or like people listening, at least for myself,
I use all of them. It's just us.
What kind of shitty brand deals do you want to get, dude?
No. Listen, I think this is going to be the main bigger point about this whole thing is that I use every single one of these plugins all the time. But I think with anything, we're going to say it a bunch. It's using it, not overusing it, rather. It's not, I hesitate to say the right way because I hate saying that, but it's just not overdoing it. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about was the most requested one when I did our little questionnaire on Instagram the other day. The God particle, for our listeners who don't know what it is for some reason, it's a plugin that was made by Jason Joshua and other people. It's meant to be a mix bus, plugin, but you can use it in other applications as well. It's like a multi-band compressor. It's doing some kind of widening. It's a limiter. I think
it's apparently an Ozone 4 setting or something.
Pretty much it's his Ozone 4 setting that he's like, I can't upgrade my computer because I have this Ozone setting, and now he uses God particle. Good for him. So Dave, I feel like you haven't spoken in a while. What's your take on God particle?
I still use it. It started as a very obviously different thing. I think everyone, that I know that used it initially sort of was like, on 100% everything, crazy limiter, all of this shit. And then slowly, as I think we've all like peeled back the layers and experimented with different things, it has come to a place where like, okay, it's heavy-handed in a myriad of different ways or doing different things. Right now it exists on my mix bus, but it lives at 0% and everything is basically turned off. And there's a few like inputs and shit turned down because of some gain staging stuff that's not worth getting into. But I sort of just live with it off for a while. And then like I will turn up the percentage to like the 20-30% mark of everything else. Like I don't use the limiter, just that sort of big center knob. And I would say like, it makes the cut 40% of the time, somewhere in there. And sometimes it does something incredible. Like it just sort of like shifts the perspective. And this is where I've realized like as a person, you'll remember Jay years ago, like I sort of did like full plug-in wipe, like I'm going to have nothing in the template anywhere, like very, very clean. And then I just realized slowly over time, and this is exclusively just for me, is that in that era, I struggled with consistency. So what emerged was like some of those mixes when I look back on, I go like, oh, like this came out fucking beautiful. And then there's somewhere I'm like, this is literal dog shit and I am a horrible human. And what I found is the more I work through sort of that like frame, if we call it like a frame perspective, right? So like sort of like a built-in frame that does like a thing. The more I have historically found I have had success in getting things to translate in the way that I hear them. Like I'm listening to it, I go and take it elsewhere, I give it to other people. Those ideas of it are the same kind of everywhere. And so I think God Particle can kind of be good for that in that respect. The same thing, it also lives on I love it actually on my drum bus. It lives there. And again, is it 0% and is, I think, off. And then like I will turn it on and then I will try it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's clearly
Here's
just
a quick question for you.
Yeah.
What to your ears, if you can describe it, what made you go from like, just because I know what our original, more yours, original God Particle setting when we were working together a ton. Yeah. It was like, usually sitting at that 100% and like we would hit the limiter a certain way. What to your ears was like, okay, it's doing too much of this now that I don't like, so I'm backing off on it.
I think it's two things. It's one, it was just like talking to a lot of mixer homies who sort of had very varying sizes of successive mixers and wildly different takes than you would sort of expect. And kind of arrived at like, don't treat it like it's the everything that it purports to be, you know what I mean? Which makes sense. Like to DJ's point earlier, it's like we're all like silver bullet time, and then like it never works out. It never once has ever worked out that that's going to be the thing. So that was, I think, like the crack in the ice, if you will, of like, just different conversations with different people using it and people being like, I think it was the first with like Michael Freeman. He was like, yeah, I like it, but like I turned off the limiter because I fucking hate the limiter. And I was like, huh. And then I like turned off the limiter and yeah, exactly. Right. And then Scott's right. I turned it off and I went, yeah, you know what? I actually do prefer something else. And all of that has now led me to a place where like I actually do like a monthly or like every 6 week sort of like audit of everything that's kind of happening in the template and make some decisions in terms of like if I want to change things. Like I have this little sticky note that exists on my desktop of how I want to change stuff around. And so it's not uncommon for me to like very slowly over time shift my perspective of things. And sometimes that's like different hardware that I've integrated into the process before it's hitting things. Sometimes that's just like my ears have changed and I go like, I'd fucking hate this now. There's also like, I don't know, it's like, this is the problem of the frame mentality, is that when you change something downstream, it has massive effects upstream. And sometimes that means you're going to totally scrap the settings on a plugin, or, something like that. I hope that answered the question.
No, it did. It did. Scott, what's your take on God Particle?
I just feel like it's a symbol of the conversation we're really trying to have. And I think my experience with God Particle is not uncommon, similar with what was the Serbian one, Mixhead.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you try it on a bunch of mixes. Sounds really dope when you're doing it. You're stoked. You print the mix. And then you come back a couple months later and you're listening to mixes from this era. And I think this sort of speaks to what Dave was talking to too, about just, trying different things in different eras and seeing how it comes out. And I look back on the times that I was using God Particle and Mixhead on stuff. And it's like, I don't like those mixes. And to its credit, I think like I like the mid boost in God Particle. Right. I think it's a great mid boost. I don't know what it's doing, but it sounds dope. I hate the limiter. I think it's awful. So for me, it was like, I do want some kind of division of labor between my plugins. And so am I really going to use this plugin like just because I like the mid boost on it? Like probably not. So that's what sort of I'm at with it. And I think a lot of this, the core of like what is ruining your mix, I think, is the desire to keep finding things that are going to fix your mix. And it's like, that's not really the thing that's going to fix your mix. It's like, totally. It's what you're not doing most of the time.
If I only buy one more plugin, my mix will be fucking great. Like,
right. And there is like obviously some truth in like having great tools and like being on the forefront of what's coming out. But my philosophy has really come around much closer to like be intimate with the tools that you use and limit it. I'm super limited in my plugins now, what I'm using. And, I'm never looking at the plugin menu. And to me, like, that's the thing that's made my mixes better.
Right. DJ, what about you?
So I don't like God Particle.
There you go. DJ?
I don't use it anymore. I got it because other people were asking for it and asking about it and bringing me sessions that had it on it, so I got it. I generally don't use plugins like God Particle. I have also stopped kind of using Ozone in a lot of ways in most sessions. I'm just not looking for the do everything boxes in my process right now. I don't want to do that. I'm also not taking things fully to the finish line most of the time in my space, or if I am, it's very intentional, and I'm trying to keep it kind of rough and fun and raw. But if I'm getting surgical in these ways, then I want to use more surgical tools. I don't want to use something that claims to be the only thing it needs to be on my mix bus. I don't want to do that ever, really.
Here's the thing I think
fair.
that's important to say about God Particle, and even the next one that I'm going to bring up, CLA Vocals, which I don't want to spend too much time on. But I think what it is, especially for younger producers who are just starting out and they haven't developed the skills quite yet, these plugins are really like saviors, but they also like might prevent you from learning. Where I think it's like the God Particle, it could get your mix to sound up to speed with, like we're all competing against the top producers in the world. That's just what it is. If we're, especially in the pitch world, and you have to get your mix to sound just good, if not better. And sometimes just throwing on God Particle, if you're a younger producer and you don't really quite know what you're doing yet, but you just have like raw talent, that's a good thing. But then you're also like not learning how to do it yourself. Same thing with CLA Vocals, where it's like, so many beat makers, producers who haven't had the opportunity to work with songwriters or artists yet because they're just like in their room making beats. We spoke about this on the last roundtable, where it's like it's just a opportunity thing, where it's like a lot of us came from bands, so we were always working with singers, and we had the opportunity to like shape our records around it. And these beat makers, for lack of a better term, it's like they were just making instrumentals in the room and they didn't quite know how to do vocals. And I think CLA Vocals is like the quick, like, all right, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but if I put this on it, it's better than what I was doing. What do you guys feel about, and I'll let anyone jump in if you just want to raise your hand and take it, like about that argument for them in like the younger, earlier stages?
I'm not
I think
sure
it's a fantastic argument.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic argument.
It's an argument for convenience,
Yeah.
It is an argument for convenience, but like it's an argument for like whatever, like acknowledging what your goal is. Like I was meeting with an artist today, and she's like a new artist. She's just starting to write songs, and she's like, okay, I need to like figure out how to produce out some demos that sound pretty good because I need stuff to show people and put on socials, et cetera, et cetera. And she was like, man, I really don't know like what to do with my vocal processing. And I listened to these demos she had, and like her voice sounds incredible on them. And it's like CLA Vocals, perfect for that. Like you don't need to learn how to produce vocals and like do all of these different kinds of processing that we do to make vocals sound amazing. You just need to make something that you can show people so you can like get to the next step. So in that scenario, like I think, fuck yeah, CLA Vocals. Right. But if you're trying to really finish records and like make pro sounding mixes, there's not a ton of applications for it.
Right.
I think there's also like a desire, like the underpinning of all of this is interest. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of there's like I agree completely. It's like 100% about like a matter of convenience. And I think like, we could accidentally stumble into like the prevalence of AI and what that means for the future. But I kind of go like, for guys like us, like we're sort of like, this actually in my head actually secures our version of employment over time, is that we are the people who are interested enough in breaking it out and going, okay, if I take CLA off, how can I make this thing better to be more precise and more complete and more musical, or whatever you know what I mean?
Appropriate.
I think it's more
appropriate
it's
is usually the thing.
Appropriate,
yes.
But it's also more unique. How can I get it to sound like how I want to do it, or how it's going to fit that singer, right? Like, just for example, like Billie Eilish, never used fucking CLA Vocals on her voice. It would have fucking ruined it. And I think they were smart, and I think it's mostly because Phineas wasn't buying plugins, but they were like shaping her vocal a certain way. Yeah. And the lack of that plugin, probably shaped it, right?
Yeah. I would argue that a lot of people using CLA Vocals are not buying plugins.
Accurate, fair enough. Super accurate.
Fair enough.
That might be.
Yeah.
I do think it to me, it sort of comes down to a level of like actual interest and like whether or not a person is going to rage quit. Like I've met a few people whom are very musical, very interested, wholly untechnical as people, and they find themselves against the wall of like, this is going to make me not want to do the thing. And just on like a human level, I would rather you feel empowered to make, like, you could be the world's greatest songwriter, but if you're so frustrated at the prospect of just like putting together something, then I'm like, yeah, absolutely do that. And for the rest of us, like, if you are super interested in like, or not even super, even like casually interested in like the somewhat technical aspect and the undertaking that lies therein, I think we all know the answer is like, put that motherfucker in the garbage and never look at that plugin again.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think every songwriter and every artist should learn how to even just use Logic, to learn how to record their own vocal, to get an idea down. And Logic is really good because they do have a lot of like of their own like kind of presets just within Logic. Pro Tools has that now. I've never honestly used them, so I can't tell you if they're good or bad or not. But
we know. Right. But we know.
But we know. But
we do know, though.
But what I was going to say about that is the difference between those in Pro Tools and Ableton and Logic, that they have like their preset vocal chains where it's like it loads up 5 or 6 plugins automatically versus CLA Vocals, is that at least in that instance, you can kind of see what they're doing. And you're able to actually, and you can tweak. And that's how I personally learned. Like I learned so much from like loading up plugins and then seeing what it was doing. And it's like, oh, okay. Versus like CLA, you're just like, I move this knob up and down and now it sounds good.
Warmer.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Versus
like you're not
an SSL emulation, which is like, oh, I can see that like the vocal male preset has dialed 10K for 5 dB, which is whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, the idea of like, hey, why did they do that? And what does this actually do? And if I twist this knob, there's like some element of like understanding of what's occurring.
Well, understanding and learning by doing. And like, I think, again, like convenience versus actually wanting to learn, where if you're a songwriter and you're just trying to get ideas down, great. You CLA Vocals, fucking do it. You're just trying to get your idea down. But I think exactly like we're all saying, where it's like, if you're trying to do what we're doing, be professional producers or be an artist where you produce your own stuff, it's like, it's important to like understand what CLA Vocals does. Because do I still use it every once in a while for very specific things? Absolutely, I do. Is it on my lead vocal?
Shame.
Almost never. It's like it's on those rare cases where it's like someone else.
He did say he suggested sometimes, though. He did just suggest sometimes.
I was gonna say that CLA Vocals is like someone you record on a really shitty mic or an SM7, and I'm like, I know that will make it sound good much faster.
See, it's back to the fast thing though. Again, it's back to it. Look, this is what I want to tell the people out in the world, because what I have seen people do as well is people get stuck. You know, they find all the shortcuts that get them to a certain place, and then they get stuck and they go, wait, why can't I get past this certain plateau of my mixes or my productions? And it's because they've stuck too close to presets or to plugins that are shortcuts. And like, what I need people to do is I need you guys to join the fucking culture that you want to subscribe to by wanting to produce music, by wanting to do that. Don't you think all of us would do all the shortcuts if that actually worked? Don't you think everyone would do that if that was actually how you do it? Do you really think you become a singing star by getting on American Idol and winning a fucking contest? Like, at some point, you do have to put in the time. You do have to earn this. Yeah. I want them to earn it. I want them to learn their ears to the degree that they can participate in music making and art creation at a serious level. It is not making your mixes sound good to a certain degree. This is like, okay, think of this example. You're trying to paint or draw an image of a forest, and you open up a box of crayons and it says forest green, and you go, aha, that is what I'm doing. So I shall use the forest green and I will draw my forest with that. You know, that is not actually how art works. And like, you should not think that because that tool tells you that's what it's for, that's what I need to use it for, and that's the end, and that's my shortcut, and that's how I get to the good forest drawing I was trying to do. Like at some point, learning how how the tools that you have can be abused to emotional effect, to like great emotional effect, is what we're all trying to do. And you just don't get a sense of that by any quick plugins. You have to spend the time.
And I think that's so true too, because I've now done like 50 somewhat interviews with different producers. And the one thing that I noticed about these producers who had success really young, I'm talking about like fucking 20 years old, like having, a platinum record, is that when I talk to them about their process, they honestly, they never use shortcuts. It was always like, I had Ableton, that's all I had. I couldn't afford anything else, and so I figured out how to like do it with like the plugins, or I had Logic, and I figured out how to use the Logic plugins to get the sounds I wanted. It like that's
Or I made a friend, and my friend showed me how to do this and showed me how to do that. And now we make music together. Now you're part of a scene. Now you're part of a community. Right. That's the thing. Like get out of your solitude, and that's what we all love doing. We're sitting here talking about gear because this is how you get better at things, as you discuss it and you analyze things, and you like, I want everybody to do that. And some of these plugins we're talking about discourage that,
Yeah, dude, I mean, I kind of look back on that now. It's like, I'm kind of happy that I was so broke for so long, because for that same reason that I mentioned about those young producers, where it's like, I had to figure out so much shit, and I came up with a couple techniques that, like, I'm not saying I invented, but that I use a lot just because I happened to stumble upon them just in my years of like, oh, I did this and I liked how it sounded, and therefore that's how.
Because you put in the time, bro. You put in the time.
He found the mix knob. He found the mix knob. He's like, oh fuck, I'm not telling anybody about this.
I know. Well, one of them, it's like again, I'm not the person to make this, but one of those things is I love, like, we'll use Decapitator as an example, but it's the one I definitely use it the most with. I love fucking pushing the fuck out of it and then bringing the mix down to like 2 or 3%. And that's something that's like,
there's a plugin that's ruining your mix.
I disagree. Get out of here.
That's a plugin that's ruining your mix. That shit makes stuff small.
It's ruining.
I'm gonna go on. I know. I'm gonna go to our next
friendships right now.
Next plugin.
Only use it on T.
On T.
You're an animal.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
T.
That's diabolical.
So this conversation obviously went a little long because this is how it goes with all my best friends over here. So we're going to cut this episode into 2. We're going to release part 2 next Saturday. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy part 2 coming out next week. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Producer Points. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share with fellow music enthusiasts. For an encore, check out our Spotify playlist featuring all the songs we've discussed on the show, giving you the perfect soundtrack to your creative journey. Additional audio and video editing for this episode was done by Nathan Rebello. Until next time, this is Justin Gammella.